Alright, what is up guys? So we are here with the review I've been very excited to do for a while, ever since AWA, and that is for the Geno Breaker, which of course is known as one of the most powerful Zoids in the anime that it debuted in Chaotic Century. So I got this alongside the Death Soarer at AWA this year, and I always talk about how that con always leads to me walking out with a bunch of Zoids unexpectedly. And this was definitely unexpected as well. I was walking around through the Super Happy Fun sale, not really seeing anything I wanted that much. And then I saw this and it stood out to me, and I was like, I'm going to have to pick this up. I'm really excited about it. I've always wanted a Geno Breaker. And so I got it. And then I noticed the Death Soarer on his table, and I already kind of told that story of how that happened. And so the Death Soarer ended up coming with me after he lowered the price. But this was a grab pretty much immediately because he was selling it for a really good price. It's complete. It's in pretty good condition, although it was really dusty. And so I've already done a lot of cleaning to it, but a lot more cleaning needs to be done. I just tipped him over and noticed that there's a bunch of dust and like cobwebs between the on the bottom of his feet. So I need to go back and clean it up a lot more. But other than that, it's in really good shape, and I'm really happy that I was finally able to get my hands on one, especially for such a reasonable price. So this is the Takara Tomy version that was released in the year 2000, and this is for, of course, the Chaotic Century anime line when Zoids first came back in 1999 for the anime after being kind of dormant since the late 80s, early 90s. So a lot is going on with this guy, so I'm going to set him down. Unfortunately, we don't have the best camera angle to really show him off, but I just kind of want to talk about the Geno Breaker in terms of character for a moment, and then we'll get back into it. So the Geno Breaker is the evolution of the Geno Soarer, as you guys probably know. And the Geno Soarer was the Zoid used by sort of the rival slash antagonist character of Chaotic Century, Raven. And the Geno Soarer was a unique and powerful Zoid, so powerful that it sort of effortlessly dispatched the main character Van's Shield Liger, which resorted to him using the organoid system to sort of repair and evolve the Shield Liger into the Blade Liger, which is when the Blade Liger was sort of first introduced to the canon of Zoids in general, because it hadn't existed prior to that. Then the Blade Liger ended up being a match for the Geno Soarer, and after the first arc of Chaotic Century was finished, where he's able to kind of push back against Raven with the Geno Soarer, and then later go and defeat the Death Soarer in the Battle of the Imperial Capital. Then Raven, being sort of influenced by darker powers, like I never really thought he was a bad guy necessarily, but he was very influenced by Prozin and Hiltz and the other antagonist characters. And so he was just filled with anger and rage. Partway through Guardian Force, the second series of Chaotic Century, he used the organoid system himself with his organoid shadow to evolve the Geno Soarer into the Geno Breaker. One of the enhancements that was made to the Zoid when this happened was extremely powerful melee-based attacks with these blade units on the side here. But also, one of the most devastating things about the Geno Soarer was its charged particle beam. And so the problem with the charged particle beam was that the Geno Soarer had to deploy these little anchors on its feet like so, and get ready to brace itself against the ground so it could actually fire its charged particle beam. And that was a tactic that they knew about and they used to defeat the Geno Soarer. So with the Geno Breaker, when it went to go do the same thing and they broke off these grounding anchors like this, the Geno Breaker proceeded to move freely and still use its charged particle beam with no effort. So that made it such a wild card, very unpredictable. And they never technically ever beat the Geno Breaker in Chaotic Century. It still continued to be extremely powerful and pretty much uncontested by entire armies of Zoids. Couldn't beat this thing. Of course, it did get severely damaged in the final battle when Raven comes together with our protagonist to end up fighting the Death Soarer again, and I think he actually teamed up with Van a little bit to fight the Death Stinger as well, which, as I said in the Death Stinger's review, is also nigh indestructible. That pretty much concludes the involvement of the Geno Breaker in the anime. It was very, very prolific in the Guardian Force series, and sort of has a similar storyline in the Zoids battle story, where it was implemented by the Empire to counter the Blade Liger because the Geno Soarers were just losing wholesale against the Blade Liger. The Geno Breaker ended up being very effective at taking out the Blade Liger until they introduced the attack boosters, which sort of leveled the playing field a little bit. Obviously, within the context of Chaotic Century and the battle story at that moment, the Geno Breaker was considered extremely powerful, but or one of the most powerful Zoids the Empire had. But the Berserk Fury is widely considered to be its successor as far as both those continuities are concerned. I want to talk about it a little bit within the context of the video games as well, with the Zoids Versus trilogy and Zoids Battle Legends, because the Geno Breaker in those games, in spite of how powerful it is in the storyline, is not very good. So it does have a lot of health and some strong melee attacks, but it has a very poor arrangement of ranged weapons that can be attached to it, such as these right here, which is known as the Weapon Binder in the Zoids Versus trilogy. And it doesn't have any kind of really good range attack. The Charged Particle Beam is just resorted for a EX special attack that you can only use if you're at critical health anyway. So you wouldn't want to do that in the video game. And the Geno Soarer is just way better because the Geno Soarer can equip the 2-barrel pulse cannon on top, whereas the Geno Breaker can't. The Geno Breaker is not actually that good in the video game. In terms of the model kit releases, this is the original Takara Tomy one that came out in 2000. There actually was a Hasbro release, and I actually didn't know this until doing some research right before this video that there was a Hasbro release. I didn't think there was, but apparently it was a Toys R Us exclusive, and therefore is probably pretty rare and valuable and hard to find, because it was released in 2003, which was immediately before Hasbro discontinued the Zoids line altogether, and we never saw it after that. I actually remember going into a Toys R Us in 2003 looking for Zoids and seeing that they were gone. They no longer had any. So that was quite a disappointing moment as a kid, as I'm sure you would relate to. But yeah, I never saw any Geno Breakers in the wild as a kid or anything. I didn't think there was a Hasbro release of it. But like I said, apparently it was a Toys R Us exclusive, so therefore very, very rare and hard to find. So there also was the Geno Breaker Jet, which I think looks freaking amazing. It is the primary color is black with red accents, similar to the original color scheme of the Death Soarer, which I talked about in the Death Soarer's review. And that is just an amazing looking color scheme. And I love how the two kind of contrast each other, given that they have a similar significance within the story, and they're both dinosaur types, so I think that's some really cool theming. There is two different variants of the high-end Master Bottle from Kotobukiya for the Geno Breaker. There is the standard one and the Geno Breaker Raven special, and the Geno Breaker Raven has been reprinted, so there's a more modern version of it if you're looking to pick that up. I currently don't have any plans to pick up a HMM Geno Breaker, but I do have an HMM Geno Soarer, though, the Psycho Geno Soarer, which is actually my favorite variant of the Geno Soarer used by Reese in Chaotic Century, and that's the only one I really plan on getting. But if you guys are interested, the Geno Soarer HMM Raven version is actually getting a reissue and is available for pre-order on HLJ, so definitely go check that out. The Geno Breaker, honestly, is just the exact same Zoid, the exact same model kit underneath as the Geno Soarer, but what's been changed is everything up top here. This whole mechanism up top here, which I'm pretty sure I can remove. There we go. So this underneath is literally just a Geno Soarer. Headpiece is a little bit different with the blade up here. I'm pretty sure that was not on the Geno Soarer, but you would just have, a cannon stuck on back here, and that's all you would have. There's also the motorized function down here, which I'm grateful it doesn't have any batteries in it. I can actually clean this thing off a lot better now. But other than that, this is just a Geno Soarer under here. It's really all of this stuff up here that makes it different. So this is, of course, a rocket pack, which, as we saw, has some articulation to it. These pieces move up and down, which I think is really, really cool. And then we have these blades that are articulated. They swivel out on a hinge right there, and they move like so. They rotate up and down. Like, there's just tons of crazy motion you can get with these things, and they're just really, really cool. But the HMM version has an even crazier degree of articulation with this thing. And don't even get me started on the Revoltech one they made as well, which I already reviewed, the Revoltech Blade Liger Mirage. It's the same scale as that, but highly, highly articulated and honestly pretty cool. So in terms of, combat capabilities, the Geno Breaker has the Charged Particle Beam, which, as we established, there's like several fins that open up down here on the neck, up on top of the neck, across the tail, and then below down here where the landing gear come down almost, and the head comes down like this. The mouth opens up fully, and it gets ready to fire that charged particle beam out of its mouth. And this is probably part of the motorized function for the head to move up and down like that, and the mouth to open and close. I'm going to put the backpack back on it really quick. All right, there we go. That is really, really cool looking. Like I said, in terms of armaments, it has the charged particle beam. It has these blades on the side, which do get charged with energy to cut right through things, and they're incredibly effective at doing that. Smaller Zoids he can pick up in the claws and just chop them right in half, which is pretty much what happened to Irvine's Command Wolf in Guardian Force, where it was severely, severely damaged to the point where it wouldn't be able to recover, so they ended up doing the transplant to transplant its Zoid core into the Lightning Sykes, which I talked about if you guys saw my Lightning Sykes review. His Talons and Claws are also extremely dangerous. It's depicted in the anime and in the video games to have the ability to actually launch its claws out on little cables and attach itself to an enemy Zoid and hold it in place. Now, the Geno Soarer would actually use an electrified charge across those cables to stun the Zoid and keep it in place, which is depicted in the melee attack animation for the Geno Soarer in the Zoids versus trilogy. But the Geno Breaker is never actually seen on screen doing that in the anime. It just uses the claws to hold it in place, which is a pretty effective battle tactic, especially if you're fighting a particularly tough enemy Zoid that you can't just blast away with your cannons. So it would hold the enemy Zoid in place and then use whatever weapons it has to destroy it. And then, of course, it has the weapon binder here, which I actually would like to see if we can attach that to another Zoid. And I just took the whole piece of armor off with me. This thing is really old. I definitely have to clean it up. But the weapon binder is a very common, like, early borderline stock weapon we see in the Zoids versus trilogy, where it fires off a small pulse blast and missiles. And so on the toy here you can see that there's a panel that comes off the side where the missiles would shoot out. It's an okay weapon. It's not particularly useful in the game. And I just revealed another spot there I can clean on this guy. So yeah, definitely really, really cool. Very, very powerful. Like I said, especially considering that it was mobile while it can use its charged particle beam. And it also had, I don't think it had a shield. I must be thinking of the Berserk Fury. The Berserk Fury had a shield. So we'll go ahead and put those claws back down. So that's about all there is to it with this guy. Like I said, I'm very, very grateful that I finally have it and that I kind of rescued it from this guy's storage, because honestly it looks like it was just weathering away in there and it was accumulating a lot of dust, similar to the Death Soarer. So I'm very grateful that I bought it and I can clean it up and give it some love that it very much so deserves. So I won't probably have another review for a while. The next two reviews I have are the Beast Liger and the Cannonball from Zoids Wild Zero. But after that, that is all the built kits that I have, aside from the HMMs that are in my backlog. Oh no, I'm sorry, I take that back. I have 2 more Zoids on the way. I just bought from somebody on the collectors group. So I have, I wonder if I should even spoil what the, yeah, hell with it. Let's go ahead and spoil what they are. So I have the Blade Liger Shadow Impact from Fusers coming in, as well as the Race Tiger from the 3 Tiger storyline that's also used by the protagonist in Zoids Versus 3. So I just bought those the other day off of somebody in the Zoids Collectors group, and I'm very, very much looking forward to having those, which will also give me all 3 of the original colors for the original Blade Liger, which I'm very excited about, even though it's technically redundant. I just love the Blade Liger so much that I would definitely love having the gray-black version like that. So I will see you guys next time when those arrive. So it's 4 more reviews coming before I have to dig into my backlog of unbuilt HMMs, which will take a while because I'll definitely have to be moved into my new house before I attempt to build any of those, because I just don't want to move more built kits. It's going to be quite the nightmare to move the ones I have. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Make sure to like the Starcross Souls Facebook page to get more updates on this channel as well as the other channel, and subscribe for more Zoids content.